Okay, we're going to be hot in 15 seconds, people. Stand by. Queue open.
Talent, check your spot.
Audio up.
Clear the set, everybody.
Stand by camera 3. Stand by camera 1. Camera 4, check your focus.
Carol, make sure the phone guests are standing by.
Stand by camera 2.
Okay, Don, we're ready out here.
Okay, thanks. Let's rock and roll. Count them in.
10, 9,
Here we go.
8,
Flying graphic.
7,
Camera 2, I'm going to be coming to you
5,
first. Stand by to cue Mark.
4, 3, 2.
And cue Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark Crutcher, President of Life Dynamics. I want to welcome you to Life Talk for May 2014. First up is Alan Ackles with this month's Life Talk News. Alan?
All right, thank you, Mark. In Louisiana, legislation that prohibits employees or representatives of abortion providers and their affiliates from speaking or distributing information in public schools has passed the State House by a vote of 91-6. During a hearing on the bill, Dorinda Bordley of the pro-life group Bioethics Defense Fund raised the eyebrows of many lawmakers when she read directly from Planned Parenthood literature, including one titled, Healthy, Happy, and Hot. The bill is now on its way to the state Senate. In Maryland, a former associate of the notorious New Jersey abortionist Stephen Chase Brigham has surrendered his medical license and closed down his Annapolis abortion clinic in a letter to the state agency that oversees physicians. Abortionist Murdad Eli stated that he was giving up his medical license in order to avoid additional investigations or disciplinary actions. Eli had a long list of medical board complaints as well as a 3-year jail sentence for Medicaid fraud. Also in Maryland, abortionist Harold Alexander has been disciplined for operating an unlicensed abortion clinic while on suspicion with the medical board. When Operation Rescue discovered that Alexander's facility was never licensed, they filed a complaint with the state and the information was eventually confirmed. The state also found that Alexander was using unlicensed personnel to do anesthesia and wasn't monitoring women in recovery. However, the state then gave Alexander only a 3-month suspension and 3 years probation. Operation Rescue's Cheryl Solinger told Life Talk News that the punishment was nothing more than a slap on the wrist, considering that he was already on probation for botched abortions and improper sexual advances. Well, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans has upheld a new law in Texas that increases regulations on the state's abortion clinics. The court unanimously ruled that the law does not impose an undue burden on the life and health of women and is therefore constitutional. The decision means that additional regulations will begin later this year and sets the case up for a likely appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. So far, the law has resulted in the closing of 1/3 of the abortion clinics in Texas. Well, in Georgia, an abortionist responsible for the death of at least one abortion patient will be serving 4 years in prison after his conviction for Medicaid fraud. According to authorities, abortionist Tyrone Cecil Malloy engaged in a scheme that defrauded Georgia Medicaid of more than $386,000. Malloy ran the old National Gynecology Abortion Clinic in a building owned by U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder's wife. In Illinois, a long-standing Chicago abortion clinic run by husband and wife team Vinod and Vijay Goyal has closed its doors. Members of the pro-life group Northwest Families for Life had regularly prayed in front of the Forest View Medical Center for years and confirmed that the facility had shut down. Meanwhile, Gail Atterbury with Oregon Right to Life has announced that the Planned Parenthood abortion mill in McMinnville, Oregon has also been closed. Prior to 1995, Minnesota taxpayers paid for less than 1% of the abortions done in the state, but that year the Minnesota Supreme Court ruled that taxpayers are obligated to fund even purely elective abortions. Now, a new report published by the Minnesota Department of Human Services reveals that the state is paying for 33.4% of all the abortions performed in Minnesota. According to the report, over the past 17 years, taxpayers have paid out more than $20 million to kill 65,823 children. Well, in Arizona, Governor Jan Brewer has signed a bill allowing surprise inspections of abortion clinics. Previously, the state had carved out an exception for abortion clinics that gave them a 10-day notice before a state inspection could be conducted, despite the fact that every other medical facility in the state was subject to surprise inspections. The new legislation also eliminated a requirement that the state obtain a warrant to enter an abortion clinic during business hours if there is reason to believe the clinic is in violation of licensing requirements. And then a similar story from New York. Only 17 of the state's 225 abortion providers have been inspected over the past 13 years. Reports also reveal that authorities only regulate 25 centers that provide abortions. Out of that number, 8 were never inspected between 2000 and 2012, 5 were inspected just once, and the rest were inspected 2 or 3 times, or about once every 4 to 6 years. A total of 45 inspections were conducted on 17 abortion clinics over a 12-year period. An Indiana abortionist recently in the news for failing to comply with a law designed to catch child molesters is being scrutinized again after authorities seized medical records during a raid. Officials with the Special Victims Unit raided abortionist Ulrich George Klopfer's Women's Pavilion abortion facility in South Bend, Indiana, and found the clinic's conditions to be horrific. Documents reveal that in 2010 and 2012, state inspectors found that Klopfer allowed the bodies of aborted babies to be stored in a refrigerator alongside medication the office would dispense to its patients. They also found unsigned consent forms, fire hazards, and a nitrous oxide tank that had expired in December of 1989. Also in Indiana, attorneys with the Alliance Defending Freedom have filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Fort Wayne's public transportation company for refusing to accept an ad from a pro-life health care referral service for women in need. Now, according to the lawsuit, CityLink refused to allow the Women's Health Link to place advertising cards in the interior of their buses because their website discusses controversial issues. The cards contained a picture of a young woman and the tagline, "You're not alone," along with the center's contact information. Attorneys for the center, which is associated with Allen County Right to Life, point out that CityLink has permitted many other nonprofit and government organizations to place public service announcements with various messages in the interior of their buses. And finally, in Washington, D.C., another radical abortion supporter has been installed as the CEO of the Democratic National Committee. Amy Dacey formerly served as executive director of Emily's List, which raises money only for Democrats who support abortion. While making the announcement, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz stated that 99% of women have used birth control in their lifetime and 60% use it for something other than family planning. However, Wasserman Schultz found herself at the target of a Washington Post fact-check column that found her claim to be false. And so far, she has not retracted the statement. Alan Ackles here for Life Talk News. You can get daily news updates by logging on to prolifeamerica.com. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Alan. Well, 2 months in a row, we've got everybody here.
This is
all
amazing.
The regular members. Herding cats is going well this month.
Will wonders ever cease?
Of course, my buddy Troy Newman here from Operation Rescue, and
Thank you.
Destiny DeLaRosa from I never can.
New Wave Feminist.
New Wave Feminist. I always get flummoxed on that deal. Of course, Father Frank Pavone from Priest for Life, and Vice President of Life Dynamics, Renee Hobbs, my assistant, the one who actually runs things around here, and without whom I could not get along. So.
That's obvious.
Yes, that's obvious. I have to have a keeper or a handler or whatever.
I thought those were your 2 dogs.
Yeah, well, them too. But they're the ones who actually run the show around here. Before we get going any further, we had another tragic situation since our last discussion. Another girl was killed, and in Ohio, and it just, the beat goes on. Of course, we really don't know how many die because they do such a good job of covering this up, which we've talked about here on Life Talk many times before. We have actually produced death certificates here of women who were killed in abortion that don't show up on the federal figures. But here we've got another one in Ohio, and this young lady perished at an abortion clinic there, and she's now being represented by counsel, somebody that
Right.
we're
One of the tragic situations here is that not only did she die, but we're starting to see, as we're doing some more investigations, that this is, as you said, much bigger problem than ever estimated before. The abortion industry, the abortion cartel wants to cover all this stuff up and sweep it under the rug, not tell you how many women are actually dying. But what we're uncovering now is multiple situations of ambulances coming to this facility. And oftentimes they wait, just like in the Tanya Reeves case, till after the picketers are gone to call the ambulance, if they call them at all. And so we expect much more information to come out in the near future. But this woman, Lakeisha Wilson, it was a mom, very similar situation to Tanya Reeves, and a mom, obviously, because she had an abortion, but also had another live baby. And we're just terribly grieving with the family, but we're hoping to use this terrible tragedy as a springboard to close what is now Ohio's largest abortion clinic, preterm abortion mill.
Preterm in Cleveland.
And preterms had a long history. When I wrote Line 5 in '96, we had a lot of stuff in there from preterm. I mean, these guys have a long, horrible history. But
you know what we're finding out about your Line 5 is that a lot of these abortion mills that you uncovered years ago are now closing. We're finally putting the nail in the coffin.
That's right.
And these abortionists are going out of business, losing their life.
And it's sad that it has taken so long. I mean, Line 5, what was the year? It was mid-'90s, yeah, 96. And, you know, it's sad to be in a situation of I told you so. But I find constantly commenting on these cases and helping with them, it's like, you know, reporters come to us and say, oh, what do you think about this news? I say, it's not news to us.
Right.
It's not news to us. Sadly, you know. Right. But this woman she was only 22, as you know. And I mean, I just think about, you know, when we have prayer vigils in front of these abortion mills, one of the things that we recommend at Priests for Life, and we always do, we take the list, Mark, that you have on the website, and we all have on our websites, of the women, a few hundred of them, and this is just a fraction, who have been killed in these so-called safe and legal facilities, and we read them one by one. It takes a long time. We pause in between each one. We read every name. We want to impress on people this is a reality that's happening now, and it's not stopping.
Right, exactly.
So we stop it.
Well, and that's what I think people need to realize, that these abortion proponents who will talk, you know, endlessly about the number of abortions that happened prior to '73 in back alleys or, you know, hotel rooms where women bled out. We are seeing the same thing happen now. Why are we not paying attention to those women and valuing their lives just as much?
And even more, you know, Renee, you know this, being here in Texas, the litigation that's going on over HB 2, it was just recently revealed that over 200 women go to the hospital every single year from abortions here in Texas. And that number could be as high as 1,000 according to our research. So think about it. Is there any other procedure? Do you get LASIK surgery? Have to go to the hospital. Do you get a root canal? Have to go to the hospital. No. These outpatient surgeries, they're supposed to be safe and legal, are sending women to the hospital on a regular basis.
They are.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that what you brought up is important here about this contrast with illegal abortion. If this young lady, or Tanya Reeves, and you know, we mentioned her a moment ago, make no mistake about it, they murdered Tanya Reeves. And,
yes.
They let her bleed out as opposed to calling an ambulance. Because
she sat there for 5.5 hours.
5.5 hours she bled.
You know, and I've got the deposition of that abortionist, and this is the most despicable, disgusting thing I have read in a long time.
Right.
They murdered her.
Right.
Just as if they put a gun to her head, they murdered her.
They murdered that girl. But you know, 50 years ago, if you had one of these situations that they claim was common, but we now know were very rare, that a woman died from a botched abortion, then what would happen is the police would immediately launch an investigation, try to find out who this guy is, and they would go after him with a pack of dogs. Nowadays, if they kill somebody, there's no big deal. They're off the hook. And the other thing is that the abortion industry circles the wagons around these guys.
Right.
On one day, they're all on the side of this woman. But then the next day, when they kill that woman, they leave her and run over here and jump around around the abortionist. And when this woman's family goes to trial against this abortionist, they're going to be on his side against them, and they'll demean this woman. We've got transcripts here of cases that we used to be involved in. The standard defense that the abortion industry uses, what we call the slut and nut defense.
Right.
You go in there and you paint this woman as either crazy or a tramp, and so they abandon that woman instantly when the abortionist gets in trouble. They circle the wagons around him and then start shooting at her. And
there's a third one that I've noticed that's emerging. George Tiller used to do this. Amanda Gittler in Chicago is doing this, and I bet you they're going to do it with Lakeisha Wilson. They blame the woman's medical history.
Right.
She walked in with a problem that we didn't know about. She didn't disclose this. If she had disclosed this, we would know, and we would have been able to save her life. Same thing with Jennifer Morbelli. Carhart blamed Jennifer Morbelli, her death, her murder, on the girl. They blamed the woman. It's your fault.
They did that with Christy Stiles.
Christy Stiles the same way. It was your fault. Her. Don't blame us. We're just doing the surgery. You're the pathetic whelp that came in here and you killed yourself.
Right.
See, we're mentioning all these names, and there's so many others besides. And I remember sitting in that courtrroom during the Gosnell trial in Philadelphia, and the daughter, one of the days I was there, the daughter of one of the women he killed, that he was on trial for, testified. And the reporters that they were, and the pro-aborts rather, were saying, you know, their mantra was, oh, he's the exception.
Right.
He's, does not
outlier.
represent what's going on in all these other places. Nonsense.
Well, Father Frank, every time one of these people gets in that situation, he's the exception.
They're all
When
the
do they
exceptions.
become the rule?
That's
How
right.
many of them
That's
have to happen before they become the rule and not the exception?
Exactly.
But they always distance themselves from him. But anyway, the question is, how many of these women have to be butchered?
Right.
How many of them have to be raped in these abortion clinics? Which
And that happens.
we know
too.
that happens.
One final point before we move on, Mark, is, and lest anybody think differently, this is a tragic situation that this woman died, as is all of the women that died. But it is equally as tragic that their babies died. And we're here not only for the women, but even more so for the innocent, helpless baby that's being murdered every single day in these abortion mills. Make no mistake about it, we're here to save them as well.
Right, absolutely. We covered last month this situation at University of California, Santa Barbara, where this pro-abort professor attacked a young lady. We had her on the show last week, Thren Short, and the school still hasn't fired her. I don't know why. If this was any other thing, this teacher would have been fired for physically attacking a 16-year-old girl, and they haven't fired her. As a matter of fact, Michael Young, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, sent an email out campus-wide attacking Thren Short, the 16-year-old girl that was assaulted, attacking her.
Yeah.
And anyway, what do you?
It's upside down.
But the DA did file charges.
They did
against
file charges
the professor.
against her. Right.
Perhaps, maybe, hopefully,
Right.
some crazy chance that once she's convicted or gets a plea bargain, then she'll be fired.
Maybe, I don't know. We've got another issue here. We did the HB 2 here in Texas, which requires abortionists to have admitting privileges to take care of all the women they butcher or kill at a local hospital. And a third of the abortion clinics in Texas have shut down because they can't get those admitting privileges. Well, one of them in Dallas had his admitting privileges denied. Lamar Robinson, a longtime abortionist in Dallas.
He's a stellar piece of humanity.
And now a Dallas County judge has ordered the hospital to reinstate his privileges. This is mind-boggling. Right. This is like a company being told who they have to hire and who they can't. Mm-hmm. The county judge is ordering the hospital to give him his privileges back.
Well, what people have to realize about Dr. Robinson is he is not your average physician. I mean, we know that abortionists are kind of a different genre anyway, as far as their humanity and what they're able to tolerate. In the oaths that they don't honor. But I remember Dr. Robinson, we actually went there on Christmas Eve one time, and I guess because of the day and everything, we were running off a lot of business. And this is peaceful sidewalk counseling. This is sitting out there and praying. That's all we're doing. And he came out just middle finger in the air, swearing at us, cussing us out as women are walking into that clinic. And I just kept thinking, who on earth would walk in and put their life in the hands of this doctor who has already shown that he's absolutely
first off,
insane?
They're not doctors, they're abortionists.
True.
And there is a distinction between those two. Doctors heal.
Right.
When a woman is submitting to an abortion, she's not being healed of anything. Yeah. She was healthy when most likely in almost every case, she was healthy when she climbed on that table. She's not going to be healthier when she gets off. So he's not healing anything. He's killing her child.
But you're right. He's a pathetic excuse for a physician, and all he does is abortions. That's it. And and I've looked at some of these applications for hospital privileges. What does a hospital want? They want someone on their staff that can enhance their hospital, bring a good reputation in a hospital, to be able to provide health care for their patients. They don't need an abortionist. It is not a requirement. It's not something that's desirable for these hospitals. And for a judge to demand that a hospital admit this hack as a physician in their community is despicable. Yep. And this shows that it's nothing but authoritarian control over from the government over the private sector. Right. That is what Obamacare is all about. It's the abortion bailout fund, and this administration has been more despicable in applying these draconian laws than any other administration ever.
Right. All right, a lot of times when we talk about 55 million dead babies or 56 million, I'm convinced that means nothing to most people. You can't wrap your mind around 56 million of anything, much less dead babies. And we produced a video here not long ago that I'm hoping, Renee and I laid this out, and we're hoping that would kind of make people understand the proportion here. And y'all have all seen it, but I want the audience to see it. Maybe most people have seen it by now, I don't know. But anyway, let's watch this video.
Wow, that is a really powerful video.
Well, of course, what we were trying to show is the proportion, and people can, look at the number of people killed in wars, and obviously that those people gave their lives for a noble cause, as we say in the piece. But these children, many, many, many more of them, 48 times as many, killed for nothing, for no reason. There was no benefit to society from those women having been killed.
I remember
those babies having been killed.
When I was a kid, my dad challenged me to count to 1,000,000, and I tried.
Right.
And it took me, I think I gave up after a couple of hours.
No.
And I couldn't even count to 1,000,000.
Right.
And this number is just insurmountable.
After a while, it just loses meaning. 56 million, 57 million. Was it Stalin said, one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic.
Yeah.
Right. And, he's right. That people have lost perspective. That's why we wanted to do something that people could visually see.
That's right.
Yeah. And this was the best way we could come up with. We wrestled with this, for 2 weeks?
For a good while.
And they want to visually see. I mean, one of the problems I always point out about the whole abortion debate is it's too abstract. Mm-hmm. We're not going to solve this unless we concretize it, and that's what this video does. Right. In fact, we find whenever we make it concrete, my most watched YouTube video on my channel is where we actually show the procedure with the baby model, with the forceps, and this is getting a lot of hits on YouTube, right?
We've been amazed at it. Most time you put a video about abortion on YouTube, 5 years later you get 800 hits. Most of those are pro-lifers that you've told about it. This thing's already gotten 55,000 hits, and it's going up every day. We checked it Friday night, and Monday morning it had 5,000 hits just over this last weekend.
Yeah.
So and I know you guys are helping out because y'all are
we're promoting it. Oh yeah.
And it's a real simple 2-minute deal, but you think about. You could make an argument that the slavery issue in this country turned around on a very simple little book. Mm-hmm. Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is a small little easily read book, and that really turned people's minds around at that time on the issue of slavery. So you never know when some little bitty thing is going to catch people's imagination and start into thinking. And you can go, the one thing that's really interesting is to go on that YouTube video, and you can find it if you just type in "millions dead" on the YouTube search. It's the first video that comes up. Read the comments.
Wow.
And especially the comments from the pro-aborts, and you see how cold and nasty and heartless these people are.
Well, because if one life to them means zero, then 55 million also means
It still
zero.
means, 55 million times zero is still zero.
It's still zero.
And that's what it means to them. We have a situation that we've covered on Live Talk before, this woman in Pennsylvania that Amanda Catherine Hine, had her baby in the bathroom of a bar, took the baby into the toilet, into the bathroom, took the what do you call it, the tank, the lid off the tank, stuffed the baby down in there and left. And she went back into the bar and watched.
Like nothing was wrong.
Watched a wrestling match or something, wasn't it? Something, or one of the ultimate fighting things that was on television. She went back into the bar and sat down and watched that with her baby dying in the toilet tank.
Right.
And a worker found it the next morning. And my argument at the time was, and I still say this, well, if you're a pro-abort, this is your model right here, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
There shouldn't be any outrage from the pro-abortion community.
Right.
It's all the same. The Gosnell did the same. Tiller did the same. It's happening every single day.
Right. They just killed a baby. What's your problem?
Right.
If this same woman had gone to the local abortion mill, the local Gosnell or the local guy like we got down here in Houston or in Dallas, and had that baby killed in an abortion clinic, it'd have been no big deal.
Peter Singer, the bioethicist from Princeton, would have said there's absolutely nothing wrong with this.
He has openly stated that.
Nothing wrong with it.
Right. And he's being intellectually consistent.
And he's the bioethicist.
At Princeton.
At Princeton
That's why you don't
University.
send your kids to Princeton. But
An Ivy League school.
we got another situation, and we've covered several of these over the years. This one's in New York. Another woman asphyxiated her baby and with a plastic bag and then put him in a shopping bag and got arrested with the baby in the shopping bag. And we're seeing more and more of this stuff.
Right.
Now, the question is, why are we seeing so much of this stuff? And I would argue, you remember when we did the interview with the 3 girls in Houston, that American abortion clinic video that we have out,
Yes.
or that you can go online and watch it.
Yes.
And you remember, Renee, how they talked about the fact that they remembered a time when there was a big story in Houston about a baby that was found in a McDonald's bathroom. And everybody said, well, this baby was almost full term. And
She was supposed to come in that day.
yeah,
Yes.
and she said, we knew what was going on because that woman was scheduled to come in and have the second day of her abortion procedure finished. She
They've
had
already
laminaria.
inserted the laminaria.
Right, they inserted in the laminaria to dilate the cervix. She goes home, she's supposed to come back the next day. Well, in the meantime, she goes into labor, gives birth to the baby, and just leaves it in the toilet at the McDonald's.
Right.
And we're seeing more and more and more of these cases. And nobody is connecting the dots here. Nobody is putting these two things together. I'm going to tell you that a large percentage of these are just exactly that. These women had laminaria put in them the day before for a late-term abortion. This sort of thing happens. This woman has her baby in a bar bathroom. And that would explain, you say, well, how can this woman be so cold and heartless to have this baby and then put him in the toilet tank and then
She wanted him dead anyways.
she was going to have him killed anyway?
Right.
You know, he just popped out a few hours earlier than he would have otherwise.
Right.
One thing we found when we were exposing the abortion collaborators across the nation is the collusion between the abortionists and the hospitals and the and the hotels. And what these late-term abortionists will do is just like this: is they start a procedure, the abortion procedure, they kill the baby, or they begin by inserting some laminaria, give her some Pitocin, and they send her back to the hotel. And this is a very common occurrence where, in fact, Kristen Gilbert had her baby in the hotel room, and of course she died from complications to the abortion that Carhart gave her. But
That was Tiller.
Tiller and Carhart. They were,
okay.
Carhart started it, Tiller finished it. They're both responsible for Kristen Gilbert's death, but you're right. But if there wasn't this collusion, this cooperation, silent cooperation between the hospitals or the hotel rooms where these women are staying and the abortion mill, we would be seeing situations like this in the evening news every single day, not just once in a while.
Right, right.
Well, just more of the, I think the the difference between, a McDonald's bathroom and a hospital. All of a sudden, one's a choice and the other's murder. You've got a woman who 5 minutes before she delivers, that's a choice, while the other would be murder. You have, a parent who, as long as the mother's the one choosing the death of the child, then that's a choice. Whereas if the father were to do something like that, then it's murder. We see these inconsistencies because you can't go off of location or the person procuring the abortion. You have to go off of what is a life. And that needs to be where we root the laws in. When is this a life that's worth protecting and valuing?
Right.
Well, we have a girl in England. Her name is Josie Cunningham, and she wants to be on Big Brother. She was interviewed for the show, the reality talk show. She's 18 weeks pregnant and wants to have an abortion to be on this show. She told them that she was pregnant, and they frowned at her. They frowned, and so she's going to have an abortion intentionally.
So she can be on this idiotic show.
To be on this show, yeah. She wants her future career to be in a pink Range Rover and to have a big house.
Well, she said that.
She, said
She
that.
openly stated that's a year from now,
Right.
I won't have a baby, I'll have a pink Range Rover and a big house.
That's right.
You know what the Bible is? What Jesus said about that? He says, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul?"
Right. Well, this woman has lost her soul.
Yeah.
But where is the abortion industry who's always saying, well, women only do this after serious thought and for really hard reasons.
Right.
You have no right to interfere. Then they should be out condemning this woman too.
Isn't that a birth control abortion?
Yeah, she's bragging about being pregnant. She's smoking a cigarette and rubbing her stomach, knowing that, and she has an appointment this week to abort her baby.
She's sick.
Another thing this brings up, and I hear people talk about this on both sides of the debate. They say, well, we can take steps to make sure that abortions only happen early in pregnancy, and we'll get rid of these late-term abortions. The problem is that no matter what you do to promote abortion earlier, like some of these groups try to say they're doing, you're always going to have circumstances like this that arise, where all of a sudden you have what you think is a reason to kill that baby later in pregnancy. You also have denial, people who go through most of their pregnancy denying that they're even pregnant. And you have the ambivalence. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, the clock is still ticking. Time is still going by. You're not sure what you're going to do, and before you know it, you're in a late-term abortion situation. Or you find out something about the baby. Or later in the pregnancy, you lose the support of the father, or you lose your financial help, or whatever happens. There's always going to be, as long as abortion is legal, it's going to happen in these later stages of pregnancy, no matter what these groups try to do with PR and say, oh, do it earlier, do it earlier. We're always going to be dealing with this.
Well, first off, they've got a vested interest in seeing them later anyway. There's a lot more money in it.
There's a financial.
There's more money. That's right.
But the other thing is, we need to make a point that I know y'all agree with, but we need to continually reinforce. Morally, there's no difference between an 8-week abortion and a 28-week abortion.
Right.
It's more visually upsetting.
Right.
It's more because the more they look like us, the more jacked up about it we get. Which is wrong, because that baby, that's a new human life at the moment of fertilization, entitled to the same protections as a 10-year-old or a 50-year-old. But the fact is that this idea that they're upset about late-term abortions, well, what are they doing about them?
But
if they're upset about them.
What are they doing about it?
One reason I like highlighting this story, Renee, is because when you look at the demographics, when you look at the polling data, you got about 20-something% of people that are hardcore against abortion 100% of the time, like all of us. And they have 20% of the people that are hardcore in favor of abortion all the time, no matter what. But all those people in the middle, the 60% in the middle, they hear a story like this and they're horrified. And they say, you know what? It should not be legal for her to do this. I may be quasi-pro-choice in some rare circumstances, some exceptions, but that horrifies me. And when we make situations like that outlawed, guess what? We get them all outlawed.
Right.
So just like when they foisted Roe versus Wade on us on these extreme cases, we can take cases like this and outlaw Roe versus Wade.
On an extreme case that was a lie, by the way. Yeah. Which we know.
It's a total lie.
You had another thing from England, and we don't usually cover these things from England, but these two were just so horrific.
Yeah.
And you're talking about horrifying people. This one.
In UK, the British hospitals, or trust as they call them, 27 of them have been found to incinerate aborted babies or miscarried babies. 15,000.
To power their
electrical
outlet.
the
They're
hospital.
generating energy from burning these babies.
It's called waste to energy, which generates power for heat.
Well, I guess
They're
that kind of...
Wait a minute. Think about this. They're heating the hospital
with aborted babies.
Because it's good for the environment, right? Which a lot of these people put environment animals than humans, and so they will sacrifice humans in order to, reduce a carbon footprint.
You can't make this stuff up.
No. Just when you think you've heard it all, you say, what?
Just think about that. Wrap your mind around it. They are burning these babies as a source of fuel to heat the hospital.
Well, everybody there, Dr. Dan Poulter, he's pretty outraged about it.
Well, what are they going to do?
But
he said that he was putting a stop to it immediately.
He's outraged about the fact that they're using them to heat the hospital, but not about the fact that the hospital is killing that many of them every day.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of nutcases and hypocrisy, Jimmy Carter, who always, of course, posits himself as this decent, even though he was maybe up until Barack Obama might have been the worst president in American history.
I was going to say, yeah, he's looking a lot better every day.
He's looking better, but he's still never going to look very good. And he's a raging pro-abort, but tries to project himself as this good Christian man, and he's troubled by abortion and all this, despite the fact that, we talk about Roe versus Wade, he made the lead attorney in that case his special counsel. Sarah Weddington was special counsel to Jimmy Carter when he was president. So don't tell me he's got any concerns about abortion. And now he's saying sex selection abortions equate to the murder of babies. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Why would a baby that's killed because it's the wrong gender be a murder, but a baby that's killed just because the woman doesn't want to be pregnant, that's not a murder? Right. I'd like to hear Jimmy Carter explain that.
A few months ago, remember, we told the story about the woman who worked with children with disabilities. And so she was okay with abortion in all cases, but not because your child was going to be disabled. If you went after it because of that, that's her special cause that makes her feel warm and fuzzy inside. And so then all of a sudden, abortion's not okay in those cases. I think it's the same thing with gender, that, if you're killing it because it's a boy or a girl, then it's not okay suddenly. And I think that's why it's the video you have is so powerful about the soldiers, when you're actually able to compare it to somebody's special cause, that we're against the war and that we're losing all these American lives, overseas, but then you don't understand we're losing American lives right here. And so we constantly kind of have to find new ways to equate this to whatever cause it is that someone's passionate about. They have to realize abortion affects every one of those causes.
Right.
That's a great point.
I just think this issue of what the reason is really shows the hypocrisy of these people.
Absolutely.
I mean, it brings it out because there was a thing, again, from England, we don't want to get too much in this, but England now has identified that they have a major problem with sex selection abortion. It's very, very common over there. And one of the pro-aborts over there was talking about this guy, Lord Steele, who I'd never heard from, but he was the architect of the law, like the parallel to Roe versus Wade in England that legalized abortion. And she said, well, Lord Steele would never have sanctioned gender selection abortions.
But that's exactly what he did when he decriminalized abortion.
You can't legalize it and then say, but you can only have it if your reasons meet our approval.
See, this is where pro-choice doesn't work. A moral of this whole story that we're discussing now could be to say to people, you're not as pro-choice as you think you are.
Right.
Because really what pro-choice really means is choice is more important than life.
Right.
If it's my choice to kill this baby, well, then you know what? The reasons don't matter anymore.
Right.
And the law doesn't require that you have a reason, doesn't ask for a reason. But then when you start bringing up these reasons why people do it, like sex selection, some of these so-called pro-choice people say, oh, no, not that. Well, then they're being inconsistent with their own philosophy.
Absolutely.
Right?
If you say that it's the woman's right to make the decision, then why is one woman's reason for doing it superior to
another? No.
If you're going to say that these women have the right to do this, then who are you to judge what their reason is?
Yeah, choice is choice.
But let me tell you what this is about. This is about public relations.
Yeah.
They know that the vast majority of abortions in this country are done for reasons that most people would not approve of.
Right.
So every time they come up, no, it can't be for birth control.
And see, this is my point, that this sort of moral outrage over sex selection abortions on disability, shows that the pro-life movement is winning.
Absolutely.
Yes. It shows we're winning because we're morally outraged over all abortions, and it makes them look stupid.
Right.
They know abortion is killing a baby, so they have to at least feign some sort of outrage that is consistent with a moral ethic.
Yeah.
And secondly, they don't have a moral ethic.
Right.
When
They have no morals.
when you divorce God from the situation and there's no moral standard, the Ten Commandments are thrown out the window, there's no imago Dei, the image of God created in that baby, then they can just make things up at any time, which says we have to get back to the Bible, and the roots of morality are structured in the Ten Commandments. If they're not there, if there's not humanity at the moment of conception, then it's willy-nilly. You're outraged at any time.
Well, I just didn't want to let it be unrecognized that a heretic like Jimmy Carter is out here lecturing people about his and trying to posit himself as morally superior.
He has no moral authority.
No, none whatsoever.
He has no moral authority.
Now, let me tell you something you're talking about us winning, and we are winning. And another example of this is you're starting to see, and we've seen this in the past, but now you're starting to see it even, I think, ratchet up a little bit more. States, pro-abortion in certain states, trying to pass laws that would codify Roe in their state law.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing that it's doomed on the federal level. And Colorado right now is dealing with that very issue. They've got a bill up there that would establish abortion as a fundamental, basic human right in Colorado state law. Now, you say, well, that doesn't indicate that you're winning or that they think you're winning. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Because if you think that Roe is permanent and that this is just going to continue on the permanent level, forever level, you don't need this.
Yeah.
Roe already establishes this.
Well, that's what they did in Roe, is they repealed all abortion laws.
Right.
There was zero regulation, no
Right.
oversight, nothing on abortion until Casey in 1992, when we started to enact these pieces of legislation that began to shrink the availability of abortion, started to reduce the number of abortions, the number of abortion clinics. And what they're trying to do in Colorado, and they failed, was to repeal all of the restrictions that were put in place.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we're out of time, but I want to
bring something else up.
You know, I say all the time, thank God for giving us stupid enemies, because these people do some of the most whacked out stuff you ever heard. Anyway, in response to our campaign on with MAFA 21 showing that the motivation behind the legalization of abortion was racial genocide, these guys have said some of the really most off-the-wall things. One of them, Lori Bertram Roberts, state president of the Mississippi National Organization for Women chapter and a columnist for the Jackson Free Press, said in response to our claims that Margaret Sanger was a racist and that the motivation behind legalized abortion was race, which it clearly was. She says, quote, "First of all, Margaret Sanger did not work on abortion. She worked on birth control. Context is everything. I will never deny that Margaret Sanger was connected to the eugenics movement. What they, abortion opponents, never bothered to say is that eugenicists also wanted to limit the birth rate of poor white people and disabled people. It wasn't just black people. It was a whole lot of people they deemed to be unfit," unquote. Thank God for stupid come out here and say something like this. We weren't just going after blacks. We were going after everybody we thought was unfit.
Which is why we're going after women now. So why
They're unfit.
One of these rare moments of honesty.
Right. You know, could this woman not see what she was saying?
Nope.
We're just going after them all. Anybody we think is unfit, man, they're in our crosshairs. We're going after them.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg said something like that
that's
a few
right.
years ago. Hey, I thought we were trying to reduce the population of people we don't want.
Yeah, just after MAFA came out, right? I remember you saying, "Oh, wish she had said that before." We put it right in the video.
We did.
And then you put
it.
the reshoot.
We shot it and put it back in there. But these people are unbelievable, the stupid things they say. Like I said, we're out, but here's a sign being held by a guy at the Supreme Court and talking about the Hobby Lobby. He was one of the pro-aborts protesting there. And he's talking about birth control and abortion and sexually active women and so forth. And he says, it's not my boss's business. But then his position is that the boss has the obligation to pay for it. Where else in our society does somebody come out here and say, this is none of your business? But you have an obligation to pay for it. You're required by federal law to pay for it. We don't do this anywhere else.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
They're called teenagers.
Yeah, right.
They tell me all day, this is none of your business. Oh, but by the way,
But you
can I
pay
drive your
for it,
car?
yeah.
You pay for my gas, pay for my school?
But I was there outside the court for the Hobby Lobby Day, and this month, I want our Life Talk viewers to know, Priests for Life is in court at the appellate level, at the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. on the same issue, this HHS mandate. They're trying to force us to make this coverage in our insurance policy. We said no from the beginning. And just like Hobby Lobby now is the the case that represents all the businesses. The religious nonprofits are, of course, the group that we're in, and this is the first oral arguments on the appellate level, so we hope to make some progress on this month. And,
yeah, we got to keep fighting these people at every turn.
Exactly.
But just the sheer hypocrisy of holding this sign up saying this is none of your business. You know, you can't be involved in this. Oh, by the way, I want you to pay for it. You know, it'd be like me saying, I want a new Harley.
Yeah.
Right? And it's none of your business whether I buy a Harley or not. Oh, by the way, I'm sending you the bill. So if you get a bill, Father Frank, for $30 or $40, $50,000 or whatever, you just pony
Just
up.
pay it.
That's like the old joke about what did Bill Clinton do anytime he got an abortion bill on his desk? He paid it. And I bet he got a bunch of them. What do you want to bet?
Yep.
You know, we've been covering this issue here of how the federal government is going after conservative groups. We've all heard about this stuff with the IRS. And, you know, this is I don't think the average American understands how really dangerous this is. This is basically was the foundation of Watergate, where you have a president of the United States that uses an instrument of the federal government, in this case the IRS, which terrifies everybody, right? Because these are the only people in the world that can take everything that you own without taking you to court.
Right.
And that's what Nixon was doing. He was using entities within the federal government to go after his enemies. That's what the Obama administration is doing.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this over and over again in a lot of areas. And this IRS targeting of pro-lifers and this woman, a learner, taking all these Fifth Amendment, pleading the Fifth when she's asked these questions, which tells me what?
Guilty.
She's guilty. She's done something, or she's not worried about being indicted, right? Well, anyway, our friends at WorldNet Daily have been looking at this, and we're joined right now by Bob Unruh from Denver, from the Denver area, who's done some research on this. Hello, Bob.
Hello. How are you today?
Just fine, sir. I've read some of this stuff that you've put out, and it's very, you've done some very good work here, but it's also very alarming what these people are doing. Can you kind of bring us up to date a little bit with this?
Well, the mention was made of Richard Nixon, and of course that's a valid comparison in some respects, in that he was trying to use federal agencies. Bill Clinton did the same thing. The only difference is back then, for example, when Bill Clinton tried to use the IRS to attack his political enemies, the IRS refused. Now the IRS is gung ho, apparently, right on board with everything that's going on. We've done some research on this, and we've reported a lot on this. That's been more my end of it, is reporting on this. And there are several groups that have done a great deal of work on this, including the Freedom of Information Act requests, and then the subsequent lawsuits that are always required to really get the information. And one of them is Judicial Watch, and they came out with a report just recently that we wrote about that the IRS went way beyond what people would expect. They not only targeted conservative groups that were applying for tax-exempt status, they targeted groups that already had tax-exempt status, literally delaying and harassing these groups with the questions, and you've all seen them in the reports, the question, the demand, what prayers do you have in your meetings? And,
right.
And that's none of the government's business from the word go. But for the IRS to be demanding that is just so far out of reach. It's like people don't even believe that it's really going on.
Well, Bob, for years we never said anything about it here on Life Talk because I was afraid people would think we were nuts. But back during the Clinton administration, we had a situation here at Life Dynamics, and now that I've talked about it, I found out that other people did too. You had a similar situation at OR. Sure. We discovered that our phones were being tapped. And our mail was being opened. All of our mail was coming here every day, having been opened. It was clear that all our mail was being opened. And, when this happens, I remember at the time thinking, well, who do we call? Do you call the police? How do we know the Denton police aren't part of it? And if the Denton police aren't part of it and they found out that the FBI is, or the IRS or whoever, they're going to back off. And you don't know who to call and who to talk to.
Right.
Now, fortunately, an attorney that helped us with this thing put us in touch with the right person who had previously worked in the Justice Department. We told him what was going on, and he said, and before I could even get the story out completely, he said, I can stop you right there. He said, I can tell you exactly what's happening right here. They went to a judge to try to get a warrant to do this stuff. The judge says, you've got no basis to get a warrant to open these people's mail or tap their phones, and so they just went ahead and did it anyway. And it wasn't a theory that we had, it wasn't a feeling that we had. We were able to absolutely prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that our mail was being opened and our phones were tapped. But I didn't talk about it, out in public for many, many years because I'm thinking people think I'm nuts.
Right.
But now with this kind of stuff coming out, maybe people will see, well, yeah, it is. Maybe these things do happen.
Well, they're doing it for two reasons, Mark. Number one, they're on a fishing expedition just to see if you're doing anything illegal.
Right.
But number two, they did this intentionally to intimidate you from doing the pro-life work that you're doing.
Right.
And the same thing with us. And we went through a 5-year investigation by the IRS. And what we found out was the investigation is the punishment.
Right.
They don't want to take you to court. If we went to court, we would have won, but it would spend another $100,000 in legal fees to do it. So we finally had to give up our 501c3, and we're no longer one of these 501c3 organizations, because literally the federal government intimidated us out of being a nonprofit organization.
And we had the same kind of struggle. I mean, we went through, and Bob, I don't know if you're aware of this, but at Priests for Life, the IRS examined us for our political activities, and we maintained the C3 status. In the end of the whole thing, they said, oh, you didn't violate it. And I said to them, we could have told you that from step one, Right. But they wanted to know the content of my sermons, the content. And it's like you said before, the content of the prayers, the content of the preaching. They know, what is this? How does this have anything to do with
this is Nazi Germany.
America? Yeah.
And that's what the Nazis did. They destroyed their political enemies. I have a question for Bob. Bob, have you seen anything other than the IRS? Or is this totalitarian government using any other entities to intimidate pro-lifers or Christian conservative organizations?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, the most recent report that I did just a couple of days ago was on this Judicial Watch investigation, their FOIA lawsuit. And they obtained emails where this Lois Lerner was in a regular conversation with the Department of Justice. And why would that be? The emails reveal that they were considering what would be necessary to clamp down or punish this burgeoning development of all of these political groups. Well, not political groups. They're quasi-political groups. They're 501c4s. It's a different status level than 501c3. They're allowed to do a certain level of political activity and comment on issues, especially, which everybody should be able to comment on. I mean, whether it's a Catholic priest or Southern Baptist pastor or whatever, if there is a moral issue, they have every right to comment on what's going on in the government. But anyway, they were the most recent emails show that Lois Lerner was in conversation with the Department of Justice, saying, well, should charges be filed against some of these groups? What do we do about this? And Lois Lerner herself sent in an email, well, the case law really doesn't, the specific law that we're trying to use really doesn't allow us to file charges, but what are we going to do anyway? And that's where that, and who knows what emails followed that. This is only that small pie segment of the whole vast universe of emails and conversations that went back and forth, and this is just one microcosm of that conversation. And in it they were discussing, what do we do?
Well, what you're saying then is unlike the way law enforcement is supposed to work. In other words, you have some evidence that a law has been broken, and you investigate to see whether charges can be filed or should be filed. What they're saying is, we want to file charges. Now let's go investigate and see on what basis we can do that.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute, is that what you're saying, Bob?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's there's a scenario, there's a circumstance developing that we don't like. So what can we do to stop it?
Right.
Well, and that's what they did with Dinesh D'Souza, and you've been and Bob, you've been writing a lot about that. Why don't you tell us about him? And he's got felony charges filed against him.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know the intimates of what he did or did not do. So I have to say up front that I don't know. But given the information that has become available, probably at worst he made some mistakes in not preparing the proper paperwork or something like that. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not on that inside. I don't have access to the details of what happened. but you can point out literally dozens, if not hundreds, of similar circumstances where the government has blown it off, just brushed it off. And all of a sudden, in this particular case, there are felony charges. And why would that be? Well, then you have to look at who the target is and who is doing the targeting, and then all of a sudden the light comes on.
Right. And for people who don't know, Dinesh D'Souza created the movie Obama's America, 2016. Right. It was very, very critical, and he wrote a book, several columns, very, very critical of the Obama administration.
And that put him in the crosshairs.
And he's got felony charges. I mean, how many years is he facing? 20-something?
I don't know. I know it doesn't matter if it's one day.
Look, here's the deal. We do not have free speech in America. No longer do you have free speech in America. You come out and you're critical of the administration, this regime.
You're running a risk.
You are running the risk of going to jail.
Well, let me tell you what the fundamental problem here is, and you can watch Obama and you can see this. He does not understand how to be a leader. All he understands how to be is a ruler. And there's a fundamental distinction between those two. He is a ruler. He's not a leader.
That's a good point.
And he's a horrible leader, obviously. But he doesn't understand that distinction, and that's the environment that we live in today. And it's a very dangerous situation that we have. We could be watching, and you hate to say things like this because you sound like a conspiracy nut or, some right-wing, fanatic or whatever.
All the above.
Religious idiot or something. But we could be watching the embryonic stages of the collapse of this country if we don't turn this stuff around.
And I always say the best way to defend your free speech rights is to exercise them without fear. The climate we're in now would not have come about so easily and may not have come about at all if we didn't censor ourselves so much. And when I say we, the institutions, including the churches. I mean, we handcuff ourselves before Obama comes along.
Right.
We're telling ourselves, oh, we can't talk about this and we shouldn't talk about that. We don't want to get in trouble with this and we don't want to lose our tax exempt status about that. Enough of this nonsense.
Right.
We're law-abiding citizens, but you don't stifle yourself when you got to comment on moral issues.
Yep. Well, it's a scary environment. I don't see how you can, if you work in this every day and the person who's newest here is you, of course. 3 years ago, you look at the things you've learned in the last 3 years that you've been in Life Dynamics. Did you have any idea all this stuff was going on?
No.
If you're just the average person out there, raising your family and making a living and going to work and going to church and all that, you don't pay attention to this stuff. You don't know what's going on. It's really scary. Well, thanks for being with us, Bob. We really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing there. And I'm sure we'll be calling on you again in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Anyway, we had we're always talking here about the failure of the churches and so forth, and we wouldn't be in this mess if it had not been for the failure of the church. You can lay it right on their doorstep. The churches in this country have completely collapsed, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And then we've also, of course, put out the stuff with Alpha 21 showing the origins of abortion being racial genocide against the black community, which is now spilled over into the Hispanic community, and it will expand, believe me. But there's sometimes you can combine two of these things together. And recently, I've seen this woman, and I don't know why Fox News has her on there. I don't trust Fox News that much anyway, but this Alexis McGill Johnson, she's executive director of the American Values Institute. I don't know what kind of values these people claim to have. And she's also the chair of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And she always comes on and posits herself as this good Christian woman and she's written this article now about how good Christian people dominate Planned Parenthood and you can be a good Christian and support abortion and support all the other things that Planned Parenthood supports. And she projects herself as that, and I can guarantee you that the reason she wanted to be on Fox, somehow or another they found out about her, and I suspect it was PR at Planned Parenthood contacts Fox and says, hey, if you'd like to have somebody to represent, Planned Parenthood or whoever, this woman would be a good one. And her job is to go on there basically as damage control, because the more and more people in this country are starting to look at organizations like Planned Parenthood and see, hey, man, these are godless degenerates right here. And her job is to go in there and mop up. And they're giving her credibility. Well, not everybody, though. And one of our friends that's been with us many times in the past is Ryan Bomberger. And Ryan joins us from D.C. right now. Hello, Ryan.
Hey.
How are you doing?
How are you?
I suspect that the things that you've written lately about this situation has not put you on Miss Johnson's Christmas card list.
No, I mean, we're not beloved by Planned Parenthood. Of course, none of us. You're all pretty much targets of hate from Planned Parenthood.
Sure.
But this latest thing, it's an amazing reminder of how history is simply just a circle. We go around the same thing over and over again. And this is just the Negro Project from 1939. It's the same thing over and over again, using influential black individuals to tout Planned Parenthood. Back then, it was birth control, and now it's death control, basically, through abortion.
Yeah, I didn't mention that this woman is black. And she's been carefully selected to push this agenda. And again, it's just like you say, and Ryan's black as well. It's just like you said, this is the Negro Project, where Margaret Sanger, and we put it on Alpha 21, her quote, we've got to find some black pastors out there, basically, that we can dupe and lure in, and get them to do our bidding in the black community. And that's what this is about.
It is entirely. And to understand, too, look at her past. You talked about American Values Institute, which tries to talk about the issue of race as they describe in a clarified context. But all they do is they perpetuate all kinds of stereotypes and misconceptions anyway. They're far left. She also worked for Vote or Die, Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy Combs' outfit, which was quite racist in and of itself. She was the executive director there, and Russell Simmons Hip Hop Summit. I mean, she comes from a place that uses racism all the time to catapult whatever agenda she was working with. And it's no different with Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So you just feed this woman talking points, and she's a little parrot, right? She just talks and says whatever the Planned Parenthood wants her to say.
But you know what? She's an attractive woman, and she comes across quite eloquent, and so she's very convincing. It's just when you actually take note of what she's saying, the absurdity of what she's saying, but that doesn't really come across. She comes across as reasonable.
Wow.
She comes across as likable, and Planned Parenthood loves that.
Well, and see, that's the point I was making. When you watch her on Fox, she leaves herself open. I mean, she puts holes in her stories that are big enough to fly a 727 through. And Sean Hannity sits there like a doofus.
Well, he doesn't know anything.
And he doesn't understand the issues. And people think he's pro-life. He's not pro-life. And she comes out with all these idiotic statements that sound, because she's very polished and she's very professional at what she does, and she's reasonably attractive, and she speaks well, and she comes across, and her points come across as sounding very legitimate, unless you had somebody sitting there saying, well, wait a minute, though. How do you reconcile that with this?
Right. Like a Denise Borelli, who can shut her down in a second.
But Hannity sits there with this blank look on his face, and she just gets away with this. I think that they did she's like the canary in the mine. They sent her in, and she's getting no resistance, no blowback at all, and she's not being held to account for the idiotic things that she says, and so now they know they're free. They can do whatever they want.
I would say she's more like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, well,
I think the sad thing is you have so many people, it's this lazy Christianity and this default where they don't want to be bold. They don't want to stand up against abortion. So if you're going to tell me that I can be a Christian and I can still support abortion so that I'm popular with the masses, they want to buy into it.
That's exactly right. Exactly
Cheap grace is what Bonhoeffer called it.
Well, I mean, obviously you cannot be a Christian and be pro-choice if the choice is abortion. That's not physically possible. It doesn't make any logical sense. If you're Christian, you believe that God is the author of life. Do we not? Is that not one of the fundamental tenets? Right. And one of the other fundamental tenets is that God doesn't make mistakes. So if he's not capable of making a mistake, because if he does it, that it's right by definition, right? So if you combine those two tenets together, God's the author of life and he doesn't make mistakes, and that means that when there's a baby in the womb, God intended for it to be there. What other conclusion can you draw from those two things? For you to then come along and say, but it's our decision if we want to kill that or not, but we're still pro-choice. I mean, we're pro-choice on that issue, but we're still Christians and we support the person who created that life. It's this circular logic that is completely moronic. These people are are heretics. This woman is a heretic. But until she gets called out on it, she's going to continue to get away with it.
Preach it, Mark. That was good.
Well, I mean, where's the flaw in that logic?
There is none. But people don't read their Bibles, right, Ryan? They don't read their Bibles. They don't know what they truly believe, so they're duped by this wolf in sheep's clothing.
They don't even read the material from the organization itself. I mean, it's not hard to understand who and what Planned Parenthood is. Read an annual report. Every year, an annual report is from a business, an organization that touts the things that they are proud of. And in that report, all Planned Parenthood reports on are abortions, STD treatments. They don't mention general health care, which is why this Christian Post article was so shocking, first of all, because they allowed it to be published, I guess, because she claimed to be a Christian. And so my op-ed response was, well, why don't you allow KKK to have journalistic space? I mean, they claim to be Christian. If that's the standard by what you're going to go by, someone claiming to be Christian. But the things that she says are so... Some of the things she said, for instance, when veterans come back home, now veteran male soldiers coming back home, they're coming to Planned Parenthood for general basic medical needs. What? You're now Planned Parenthood is now claiming that veterans are going to Planned Parenthood for basic health care? I mean, Walgreens has health clinic, and so does CVS. CVS has what's called minute clinics, and they offer probably about 100 times more basic medical health care than Planned Parenthood does. But Planned Parenthood, through its new board chair, is claiming that they are not only the leader in reproductive health care, but the leader in general health care. And media does nothing to scrutinize it, does nothing to challenge it. And Christian Post has put it out there with no counter, no opposing view in that news article. It wasn't even an opinion piece, a news article. I find it shocking, absolutely shocking.
Well, hey, Ryan, don't you know Planned Parenthood does brain surgery, heart surgery?
Mammograms?
Yeah. They do them, and the amazing thing is they do them without mammogram machines. That's astonishing.
That's right. That's right. No, it's like a mass hypnosis. You know, this Planned Parenthood has such. I mean, you see it. Like
these are not the drones you're looking for.
A simple example, too. You know, we've seen in studies. If you, the legislators, have looked at this. If you say to people, "Hey, we got a bill to defund Planned Parenthood. We got a campaign to defund Planned Parenthood," people look at that and say, we don't want to defund Planned Parenthood. Because again, this hypnosis, they're doing all this good stuff. But then if you ask the same people, well, we have a measure to defund abortion, a whole lot more people will support that.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the same thing.
Right.
And yet the Planned Parenthood, that mantra is just everybody is fooled.
It's unbelievable. I mean, when you think about it, it is a mass hypnosis, hysteria. You know, how do you do that? I mean, it's almost like the situation, what was the name? Jim Jones down in Guyana convinces 800 people to kill their families and commit suicide.
By drinking Kool-Aid.
By drinking Kool-Aid. Well, America has drank the Kool-Aid here from Planned Parenthood.
That's where we get the Kool-Aid drinker scenario.
It's astonishing. Well, Ryan, thanks for being with us again. I appreciate your insight on this. And like I said, I'm sure that Alexis is going to put you on her Christmas card list at some point. I'm sure she'll.
We appreciate the fact that Ryan doesn't drink the Kool-Aid.
Right.
Never. I don't like Kool-Aid at all. Metaphorically or the real stuff.
Yeah, I understand. Well, thanks for being with us, Ryan.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye, sir. Let me get on this. We, the list just goes on and on. I was reading this thing here we didn't get to. Obama's prayer breakfast, which the whole
I was going to bring that up.
The whole idea just makes me want to puke. Deborah Hafner, who, and I debated her many, many years ago. She's been around forever. She's this godless, leftist, I don't even know how to describe this woman. She's an ordained Universalist Unitarian minister.
Which means useless.
Which means nothing.
You.
And, Obama invites her, and she sits up there next to Obama at the National Prayer Breakfast or whatever. Why is this man even having a prayer breakfast, and why are otherwise legitimate Christian pastors having anything to do with it? The last person up there that had any cojones was Mother Teresa. And took on Bill Clinton, sitting right there with him, and made him very uncomfortable. I don't know if you ever saw that video.
Oh, yeah.
He and Hillary are sitting there squirming around.
And she's saying abortion is murder by the mother herself.
Right.
Did I tell you, it was a few months after that I had my visit with Mother Teresa in Calcutta. And so I said, Mother, many of the American people loved your prayer breakfast speech. And she said to me, oh? She said, what about the rest of them? So she went into her rec room. She brought me a typewritten copy of the speech. I don't know if it was the one she used that day, but she gave it to me. She said, "Distribute this to all the rest of them." So we've been distributing it ever since.
Well, that's good.
But that prayer breakfast, I was going to bring that up, Mark, because just like with this pro-abort we were just talking about, American Values Institute. They use this language. And then they attack the values.
Right.
Obama at this prayer breakfast quoted from Psalm 139.
Yep.
Because we were all wonderfully made. He said, we all have an inherent dignity that no earthly authority can take away. And then he said, killing the innocent is against God's will and in fact is the ultimate betrayal of God's will.
Right.
And here we've got this pro-abortion president saying these things. I mean, again, you talk about mass hypnosis.
Well, again, if you go back and study speeches that Hitler gave, from even in the late 1920s, but even after he became prime minister of Germany in January of 1933, even the speeches that he gave there were totally opposite of what he was actually doing.
Right.
And so these guys have learned that people will listen to your words before they'll look at your deeds.
Right.
That's what these degenerates have figured out.
They know that, yeah.
They understand that. And it's a sad situation that we're in, that we have to have people like that in positions of power. And they run our government. Before we leave, you had one little thing on technology, because we've talked here about technology that's really cool.
Yeah, this is really cool.
And how technology always favors the pro-life position. We're talking about sonograms, how every piece of technology that's come along since 1973 has favored our position, every single one. And I would argue, and I've said this before, the thing that has turned the abortion issue around toward our position more than anything else has been the internet. Because now ABC, NBC, CBS, and all the others don't have a monopoly on the flow of information to the American people.
Right.
And when that monopoly was taken away, the abortion industry, which controls that entity, the American media, lost its ability to control what the public heard and didn't hear about abortion. Well, anyway, now you found something here that I think is really cool.
We do. This is really cool. It's an app, a new app from Bella Beat that detects fetal heartbeat. And so the husbands or boyfriends or whatever, it can be hooked up to anything, iPhones, any kind of smartphone it can be hooked up to. But yeah, it detects the heartbeat and there's a calendar on it. And
it allows the mother to hear her baby's heartbeat through her cell phone.
We used to be able to have to go to the midwife or the doctor to get the fetal monitor, and now you can do it through your iPhone?
You can do it through, yeah.
How cool is that? Makes me want to have another baby.
Right. Check with Melissa on that.
I'll ask her.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want to be there for that conversation. But I think that's really neat. And, there's also now this emerging technology that you can have a handheld sonogram machine. Actual sonogram. And
wow.
It will print out. I think some company from Germany is.
Are they working on that?
Yeah. No, I think it's
out.
I think it's out.
Okay.
We need to do some checking on that. But you found that the other day. I thought that was pretty neat.
You know, one of the other cool things is the pink or blue detector. I think within 9 days after being pregnant, you can detect whether the baby's a boy or a girl.
Right.
And it's like 90% accurate.
And that way, the good news there is now you can decide whether you want to abort that baby, right?
To end on a positive note,
thank you.
These would be a wonderful tool to have out on the sidewalk, so that not only can you show a woman a sonogram, but have her hear her baby's heartbeat.
Yes.
How amazing would that be?
Yeah.
What a cool tool.
Which goes right back to our discussion about that great video of the beads. We got to make it concrete. We got to make it palpable.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a visually driven culture.
Right.
People don't read anymore.
Right.
It's got to be really quick. And this is one thing that you and I were talking about this yesterday, that we've learned from the success of that beads video, is that it's got to be real quick, hard hitting.
Right.
1 or 2 minutes. That's all people are going to give you.
That's right.
And we've done some research on how people use the internet or do YouTube. And they say that, anything, if they look on the timer there, if it's over about 2 or 3 minutes, they won't even click on it.
That's right, I won't.
They want to see 1 or 2.
They want to see a 1 or 2 minute on there. And if they do click on it and you don't keep their attention right from the start, they're right off.
Right.
So the key is to make it short and to make it hard hitting so that you keep their attention all the way through it. And I think this beads video has really solidified that to me. And the success we've had with it has been has been very enlightening for us and we're going to do more things like that. We have some other ideas. You know, you and I've kicked around some other things that we can do that are similar to that.
That's right. We should make a whole series of these, get the same truth out there, 55 million, 56 million, but show it in 100 different ways.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. It was a great show. And
Thank you.
We're way over time. That was all y'all's fault. Especially you, Renee.
I know it.
You got to settle down a little bit.
Tell me about it.
For next month. All right.
Sorry.
Okay. Anyway, thanks again. And now let's see. Next month, is everybody here?
I'll be here.
I'm here.
Lord willing.
Good grief. 3 months in a row, the whole team.
That is good.
Don't count your chickens.
Yeah, that's right.
Posts before they're hatched.
Yeah, that's right. There could be a tornado between here and Kansas. It'd scare you to death.
Or Obama might invite us to dinner, Troy.
It could happen.
That could happen now.
It could
I
happen.
think I'll go.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this month. Until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how this killing is going to stop. We'll see you in June.